I have a special gift for you today. We have a guest speaker, and it's my mother, so I'm very, very proud. Everyone in this world has an opinion, but I was taught to only take advice from people that are where you want to be. Take financial advice from a rich person. Take relationship advice from someone who has a successful relationship. My mother's been married 48 years. She's a multimillionaire, and she has spent her life going around the world and motivating and blessing people. Her CD, Sarah, has sold over 1 million copies. She knows what she's talking about. So please let me introduce you to my mom.
Thank you, but sure, make me cry when he brings me up. Because I know every mother wants to have that blessing that your child believes that you have wisdom and that you have grace to live in this world that we live in, because there are challenges. And to know that you're living and your life is flowing out of you and affecting other people is what each of us women, I believe, desire. And Megas was sharing with me that maybe some of you women are having questions or challenges that somebody that has been through it could encourage you and understand you. And I think that's the heart of a great leader, a humble heart that says, I don't know that I have all the answers for you. Let me ask somebody else. And I once heard a saying that the best speaker is someone who can turn ears into eyes, help you to see a future when they're speaking. They speak into you, and you're just, you're going, I believe that. That's truth. I can do that. If someone else does that, it's true. If somebody else can live a happy life, then I can live that happy life. And I'm believing maybe some of you girls are where I was after 10 years of marriage. I was crying out to God, Lord, haven't I been kissing this frog long enough? Where's my prince? I believed in the fairy tale for so long, Snow White and Sleeping Beauty. Don't we all believe that the happily ever after and living in a castle is our destiny when we're young, and then life happens and there's like an enemy that comes in and steals all of those dreams, and we want to give up sometimes and think this frog will never turn into a prince. I need to find another frog to go kiss. Therefore, we spend a lifetime of kissing frogs. And I would just encourage you to just believe so deep in your heart that it's for you. God's promises of a life of blessing and joy, and that He'll always be there for you, of peace and happiness and a beautiful family, those never change. What changes is your belief. You stop believing it. Therefore, it can't materialize and come to you. And so I just want to encourage you today in whatever you're going through, whether it's major or just minor irritations. I swear my husband and I could have divorced over toilet paper and a sandwich. Just the little things. He was raised in a Texas wild and crazy home, alcoholic father, mother that was just, I don't even know how to describe her. She just was loving and crazy and outgoing and so different than my family. I was raised in such a quiet, conservative, English, have tea in the afternoon type of atmosphere. And when you try to combine those two lifestyles, it doesn't matter how much in love you are or what you envision, there's going to be stress and submission. I know people hate that word, but submission is really a 4-letter word, love. It's just loving somebody enough to believe that they love you enough. If they make a mistake, they'll make it right. And so combining those two lifestyles was hurtful. Actually, sometimes words can be spoken that they make a wound deeper than a physical wound, a bruise, and not to downplay if anyone is ever physically abused, not to downplay that. But words, oh my gosh, they can last a lifetime. They don't heal. And so there's things that happen in your marriage. If you can't forgive, you'll be wounded. You'll have that wound, and it'll affect you. It'll affect the way you relate with your husband. It'll affect the way you love on your children and the people around you. Forgiveness is the first one, the first key. And the reason we can forgive is God sent us a Messiah to show us forgiveness. Jesus said, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. And so we can look to him, and he can give us this incredible example of God's love, whether it's healing or deliverance or fellowship and friendship. We can look to him and gain truths. And I know for me, I wanted to be married forever. I didn't want a divorce. My parents were married for 59 and a half years before my dad passed away. And I wanted that, but I didn't want to be married and miserable. I didn't want to just struggle through it and get to 50 and, get a button or a party and they're like, there, you did it. But I had a miserable life. I didn't have joy. I didn't have peace. I didn't have fulfillment of everything, that seed that was inside of me that was destined to bloom and create incredible things. And so I went to the Lord. I believed I could have it. I believed that that was for me. And so I had to take responsibility. I absolutely had to take responsibility for my joy and my happiness. And no matter what happened, no matter if my husband was rude or unkind or booked my schedule heavier than I thought I could handle, or I didn't think he was handling our son the way that I would handle it, or the grandchildren, I had to take responsibility for my emotions, my belief in that moment, and just confess over and over again. We are a happy family. We are a blessed family. We will live happily ever after. Our children will be blessed. Our grandchildren will be blessed. It was my responsibility. I remember one time, my husband, we were in the process of building a home, and he's the type of guy, he's just into everything, absolutely everything. If they're digging a hole, he's in the hole getting muddy. If they're pouring cement, he's got cement on him. If they're climbing ladders, he's climbing ladders and ripping his clothes or getting splinters, whatever it is. He just has to be in everything. It doesn't matter that he can hire somebody and have it done. That's just him. And I had to learn to love him for that and be supportive of his energy and his curiosity and his wanting to be involved in everything. And I remember as we were building this home, he had just absolutely ruined all of his shoes, every pair of shoes he had that were casual. His casual shoes for traveling on an airplane or in a car were just ruined. And so I bought one more pair of shoes, and we were getting ready to leave on a trip that afternoon, late that afternoon. And so I had that one pair of shoes, and all of a sudden I see my husband walking out the door, and I was like, Jimmy, where are you going? He goes, oh, I'm just gonna go check on the house. And I said, no, change your shoes. That's your last pair of casual shoes. We need those for the trip this afternoon. He goes, no, I'm just gonna check on the house. That'll be fine. And so a short while later, he comes back and his shoes are covered in mud. And I said, Jimmy, look at your shoes. They're filthy, they're dirty. And he goes, well, clean them. And he walked out of the room. Now, I don't know about you ladies, but that's hard to swallow. There's something in there that wants to go, but that's not fair. I told you, and you're not respecting my time. You're not thinking of me when you make that decision to step into something dirty. You're not remembering my words and what I needed, and now you want me to clean up your mess? And I just remember standing there going, this is a decision time. What does a happily married woman do? What do you do to live happily ever after? And it's like the Lord just gave me a thought and it began to process, and rather than pick up a spirit of bitterness and anger. Now you need to understand, ladies, we were getting ready to drive from California to Arizona. We had a huge convention to go to. We had about maybe 3,000 people that were coming that weekend to hear Jimmy and I speak and to minister to them and tell them victorious ways to live life, to have a happy marriage, to have a peaceful home, to be successful in your finances. And I'm standing there, and there's an enemy that wants to steal that seed of truth out of you and make it not look real. And so it was right after Easter. I had a big chocolate Easter egg left in the refrigerator that our son had. And so I got my husband's toothbrush and I went to the refrigerator and I just ground that toothbrush in that chocolate Easter egg. Now you have to understand, the toothbrush was a treasure of my husband's because his favorite dentist had given it to him and showed him exactly how to massage his gums and all of that. So it was a very special toothbrush to him. And so I took that toothbrush that was all brown now and ground in chocolate and took his shoes into the sink, got them a little bit wet, and then set the toothbrush on top of them and smiled and walked out of the room. It wasn't very long before I heard a, "Judy, Judy, what have you done?" And I came back and I go, "What?" And he goes, "My toothbrush. What have you done with my toothbrush?" I said, "That toothbrush?" "Yes, my favorite toothbrush." And I said, "That's the one I always use to clean your shoes. And the dog dish. It's so hard to get in those icky corners of the dog dish." And about the time I thought his blood pressure couldn't handle anymore and his eyes were bulging, I picked up the toothbrush and stuck it under his nose and he could smell the chocolate. Now my husband has an incredible sense of humor and he loves to laugh. And he just started laughing and we laughed together. And we laughed all the way to Arizona with our son in the car. It was an atmosphere of love and joy and peace and believing in a future that's possible if we'll take control of the seeds that the enemy wants to plant to steal truth from us. And I want you to grab a hold of that sometimes what we see isn't the truth. Sometimes what we hear isn't the truth. I want to end with one story that so ministered to me. I was invited to a ladies' luncheon, and the guest speaker was going to be 100 years old. And this is where I connect that statement that the best speaker is one that can turn ears into eyes. And as I was invited to this luncheon, we were going to be outside in a garden setting at this church for this ladies' luncheon. The guest speaker, 100 years old, I was just enthralled to think that someone 100 years old was going to speak to this group of ladies. And I wanted to hear her and see her. But my perception of a 100-year-old woman, the only ones I'd ever known were in nursing homes, in convalescent type situations. And I remember a few on the TV evening news where they would roll them out in a wheelchair and everybody was standing around them with a cake and things, but the person in the chair didn't seem very active, involved, knowing for sure what was going on. And that was my perception, my idea of a 100-year-old woman. And so we get to this this luncheon with the ladies, and my first thought is, where is she? I'm looking for Nika. Her name was Nika, and I'm looking for her. I'm looking around and I don't see a 100-year-old woman. So I thought, well, she's probably in the back. resting. That would make sense. You know, she's 100 years old. They'll probably wheel her out when it's time for her to speak. And so we had our luncheon, and then they introduced our guest speaker. She wasn't sitting more than 4 feet away from me. She stood up. I'll never forget, she was wearing a pair of cream pants and a coral sweater. She had pearls on her neck. Her hair was perfectly styled. She stood up straight and tall and began to walk to the podium. There was a lady beside her just to steady her arm because we were on grass with sprinklers. But then she stepped up on the podium by herself, and I was taken into another world. I sat there and listened to 100 years of wisdom and experience coming out of this woman. It was the most amazing time, and it planted a seed in my heart. It gave me eyes to see a future that 100 years old isn't what the world has been telling us. We'll still have health, we'll still have wisdom, we'll still have a purpose and a destiny that God's planted in us. So ladies, protect that seed and believe it's true. God's promises don't change with circumstances. Whatever's going on, you claim the promise. I am blessed. I am peaceful. I am loved. I'm cherished. And I will live the most beautiful, incredible, joy-filled life because I believe in God. Jesus said, have faith in God. Most people could quote to you the scripture, if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you can speak to this mountain. But they leave out the fact that it begins with have faith with God, in God. And that whatever you ask of him, and don't doubt, don't waver, it'll be granted to you. And then it goes into the mustard seed parable. So hold on to your promises. Don't let them go. And live a joyful, happy, God-fulfilled life. God bless you.